think about people that you walk into a room and somebody's smiling at you and they're inviting and happy, well, it makes you more happy. It draws you to them versus somebody who's angry and frustrated and doesn't like themselves. It shows on their face, and then all of a sudden maybe you back away from them, right? And so
maybe.
Right, yeah, you absolutely do, right?
Yeah.
You come in and read the room and go, oh, that person is the one I want to talk to.
Right.
This is the Buffalo Community Podcast, all about the greatest small town in the USA, the people in it, and how it all works together. Here are your hosts, Tyler Reiss and Mark Benzer.
Hey everybody, it is the Buffalo Community Podcast, and we are here for episode number 81, and we've got Dr. Martin in the house. Dr. Martin, how are you?
I'm really good. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Awesome.
Doing great as well.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, show done.
Thanks for coming in. Yeah.
Easier than I thought.
Yeah. So you're in here. You kind of lead an interesting life. You've got a lot of hats that you wear. Number one is you're a doctor. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to talk about Bounce Travels and a little bit about that as well.
Sure.
So kind of give us a 30,000-foot view of you.
Dr. Martin, okay. Well, so I've lived in Buffalo for 16 years. So this, being a physician in our community, was one of those things where we moved to Buffalo thinking, this will be good enough for a couple of years, and then we'll figure where we go from here. And here we are 16 years later with kids in the school district and just loving the community and would never think of moving anywhere else.
Sucked you in.
What's that?
We sucked you right in.
Right, sucked me right in, one way or the other.
Yeah.
And so I have a wife and I have 3 children, and my oldest is 12, and I have twins that are 10, and so starting to get into that busy kind of age group and starting to run and do a lot of those things. And then as far as work is concerned, when I first came to town, I did what we call full scope family practice. So I delivered babies and took care of little kids and grandpas and grandmas and everybody in between. And then over the course of the last 16 years, got about 5 years into doing family medicine, and I was just really burned out and frustrated and overwhelmed, and so ended up taking a job at the hospital as what's called the Director of Medical Affairs, which is like an administrative physician position that oversees some of the docs. And for me, that was my way of like trying to figure out how to my initial attempt at work-life balance. Like how do I do this better and figure it out? And I joke, so the only thing I do now that's physician-like is I do colonoscopies, and that's it. And so,
holy crap.
Exactly. And I joke that when I started doing administrative work, I got really good at dealing with buttholes. So I should have continued to do the same thing.
Yeah. Dr. Lisco, right? Was in here. From what I heard, it's a pretty predictable schedule. You don't usually have too many emergency colonoscopies and that's sort of, why did you do that? Well, because then you can work a normal work day.
Right.
It's not too many overnights that you got to do. So it's definitely an interesting evolution.
Yeah.
Is that burnout? Is that kind of standard in the medical field?
Well, I think it is. It's getting more and more common. Maybe
common is probably a better term.
Yeah. And 5-6 years ago, when they first started looking at it, about 50% of docs were burned out. I think you throw COVID on top of that now, and if they would repeat those studies, it would be certainly way more than that. And so it really is one of those things that any of our frontline staff, our nurses, our physicians, our front desk staff who are, at the forefront of COVID for the last 20 months, there's more and more burnout every day. And I don't think that's unique to healthcare. I think healthcare is at the kind of the head of that, but I think about the teachers in our community and what they've had to go through, and the people working in line at Cub checking you out, and all the kind of frontline people during COVID and how much burnout has affected everybody.
Yeah.
And is burnout, I guess, without asking for secrets or airing dirty laundry, but in the medical field as a doctor, it's a profession that so many kids like, I want to be a doctor someday, and then you did it. And then and I would imagine there's a period of time with really high enthusiasm and then like is it the hours? Is it the schedule? Is it all of that?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all of that. I think, to be a physician, minimum amount of years you go to college after high school is 11.
Yeah.
So you give away your 20s to your education to become a physician, and then you get out, and the work hours aren't great. I mean, it's 7 o'clock in the morning to 7 o'clock at night usually, and nights and weekends and holidays and all that stuff. And so, there's a lot of that. There's a lot of, once you start having your kids and family, just like any one of us, right? Like, once we get into our 30s and 40s, we get busier and busier, and we're running and doing, and our jobs have more responsibilities, and it's, it just is one thing on top of another, and it kind of pushes you over the edge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's transition into Bounce Travels.
Yeah.
So I think that is maybe a little bit more of the work-life balance of kind of taking a step back from the chaos in Bounce Travels.
Yeah, so, this all really started maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, when we were doing some, I think, really great work at the hospital around resilience and taking better care of ourselves so we could take better care of patients. And, back, that was about 6 years ago when we had the loss of two of my physician friends and colleagues in our community. Eric LaFave passed away, and then Glenn Pfister also passed away during that time. And so that was really a time of reflection, I think, in the healthcare community of okay, are we really doing the things we want to do at the end of the day? Do we have enough time for our family at the end of the day to go home and just love our family? And the answer, was no. We need to figure out how to take better care of ourselves. And so at that time, that's really when Bounce Travels was kind of born out of that, of the idea of how do we learn about burnout, better taking care of ourselves, the inner teacher inside of us that wants to be out and tell us how we should live our life, and how do we learn more about that and do that in places that really inspire that. And so Bounce Travels goes to places like Guatemala, and we take hikes on the Camino De Santiago and pilgrimage hikes to Rome, and we do things in the U.S. as well. And so I just got back in September from a really great trip to Zion, Bryce, and the Grand Canyon that we took people. In a few weeks, we have another one that goes to Sedona. And so just how do you incorporate the idea of taking care of yourself in a place with awe and wonder is the idea behind it. Yeah.
So when you say take people, is it other people in the healthcare community?
It's really anybody, and so it's focused on healthcare people because we offer continuing education credits for physicians and nurses and the like, but it really is open to anybody. And so most trips have about 50 to 60% healthcare people, and then there's usually some educators that come along. There's a lawyer or two that might come along, a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners, and spouses are always invited, and friends are always invited. So we usually have a farmer or two and a housewife, and it just is a really wonderful mix of really awesome people.
Oh.
Yeah. So you guys are invited to come on the next one if you'd like.
Perfect.
Sedona, Arizona. What is
there's one coming up here in November, and then there's another one in February.
So there we go.
Yeah.
So you said there's some hiking and some other travel-y activities, but built into that is self-improvement type opportunities that are.
Yeah, really. And so I tell people all the time that what we do with these types of opportunities is I feel like we give people what they want, which is I want a vacation and I want to go somewhere and hike and do something fun, see some beautiful places, right? That's what most people want. And then we actually give them a little bit of what they want, but also what they need, which is how do I better take care of myself? How do I create time in my schedule to spend more time with my family? How do I figure out how to say no to some of these things that I always say yes to and I never have any time to do anything? And so we have a lot of those things sprinkled in so that not only is it really great, wonderful places to go and see, but you learn a lot about yourself. And I tell people that it's a vacation like no other vacations, because you walk out of this week spending a week with 20 people, and these people will be your friends for the rest of your life, actually. And what other vacation have you ever gone on that happens?
Right.
Yeah.
Do you go with it's like an objective of this time we're going to concentrate on mental health or just dealing with stresses, or I mean, do you go with an objective, or is it just kind of a?
We do, yeah. I have kind of a set structure of what we follow, and so there is every day there's 2 to 3 hours worth of kind of educational structure to it. And so we usually set that up by getting up early in the morning, grabbing breakfast, coming into kind of a room and just kind of talking through stuff and doing it in different ways. And then we go out and hike for the rest of the day. Or we go out and sightsee for the rest of the day and then come back in the evening and have dinner together and just kind of have conversations over dinner of what did we see today? How did the things we talked about this morning show up in our life today? And then we do it all over again the next day.
Yeah. One thing I've kind of seen in following you on social media and some of the other people that have traveled is kind of this self, I guess, not obligation, but that they're going to take their own happiness into their own hands and not have to worry about the outside world providing that happiness, for that. And that kind of resonated with me. There's nobody else that's responsible for your happiness other than yourself. Right. Is that kind of
you're right on.
A theme?
Yeah. So and if you look at the data and the research out there, it shows that 90% of our happiness is us. It's only 10% of what happens around us. So the tragedies that happen, the wonderful things that happen, that's only 10% of our happiness. The other 90%, about half of that is kind of genetic and how we approach life. And the other half of that 90% is really how we take information and how we process it in our head. So kind of what I say, it's about mindset. How do we take information? Are we always angry and frustrated all the time? And so anything that comes at us, we're just pissed off.
Right.
Or do we look at it from a glass half full type thing? And so it really is in your own hands. And one of the huge themes of these retreats is that, if we had to choose, it would be really great if only the people we worked for in the community, if only everybody else would change and do better, then our life would be better, right? That would be the easy way, and that's what we would all choose. But that doesn't happen, right?
Yeah.
Like the only person you have power and control over is yourself. And so you have, like you said, Tyler, you have the power to be happy. And so kind of realizing that instead of playing the victim and pushing it off on everybody else is pretty important and powerful, and trying to figure out how to be happy and healthy and live a long time.
I think it's a surprising, I've heard it before too, where it's life is, happiness is 90% you, 10% what happens to you. And it's kind of surprising until you think about, you put a name to it, and you go, so-and-so never seems to be happy, and there's no reason why, they have this and that. And then there's that on the other side of that coin of, man, they've had a tough go, but they always, every time I see them, they're smiling. Or, and sometimes people can put on a front, and you got to be careful about that too. But I think there are specific names that everybody knows.
Oh yeah, they're just a great, happy, wonderful person, and you know that if you're around them, that will wear off on you.
Right.
I mean, I think that brings up another really important thing, is that they say that your personality and your ego is really a combination of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yep.
And so if you're spending time with people who are frustrated and gossipy, and you just, when you walk into the room with them, you feel ick, well, guess what? That's who you're going to become. And if you surround yourself with really great people, then that wears off, and it brings you up too. Yeah.
I think sometimes that's a revelation that people don't like. That they're like, oh, that makes sense, and maybe I do need to cut some people out of my life. Not because you don't like them any less, but because they want to take charge of their own accountability.
Right.
That's the word I was looking for. They're self-accountable of moving forward, which is, I think, so much more important now with everything, social media. We both mentor at the middle school, and we work with some kids that they're just in really tough situations that don't have any type of leadership or somebody to talk to. And I think that them understanding that, or hearing it from somebody that's not their teacher or their parent or someone that they have to report to, I think we've seen that it's just treating them that way and telling them it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Take some you time. But you're exactly right. I do think it's important, especially with how many times people are inundated with advertisements, the news. I mean, there is no good news anymore. If it's good news, I mean,
It's got 3 seconds left.
Before we go.
Buy those cookies. It's
Right.
Now everything else terrible.
Yeah.
But and don't mean to really make a joke about that, but it is kind of a depressing world, and you really have to self-look at that.
Right. Well, you brought up social media, and the interesting thing around social media, there's a book called iGen, like iPhone, but iGen, Gen. And the author talks about how with the kids that are in middle school and high school now, and how they're so connected to their phone and to social media and the like, that they're seeing a lot of different things happen, and the rates of depression, anxiety, suicide, all those rates are going up in this coming generation because they don't get together in person and socialize with people anymore. Like if they want to have a party, they might all, get on Snapchat or all onto, Facebook Live or whatever, and just like be in separate houses with each other and be live with each other that way. But there's no in-person stuff happening anymore. And this book was written before COVID, so throw that in on top of it.
Sure.
Yeah,
And
it amplifies it.
the interesting part of that is all those things, depression, anxiety, suicide rates are going up. But the other interesting thing in that generation that really is focusing on social media so much is what they see is that other things are coming down. So teen pregnancy, STDs, alcoholism, drugs, because they don't get together in person anymore. And
Peer pressure is interesting.
But yeah, interesting how those things really change our way of life.
And it sounds like that book kind of focused on, or at least the portion you're referencing, focused on middle school age kids.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're all lying to ourselves if we think kids being attached to their phone is a young person thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should all be honest with ourselves and say, does it talk about increased anxiety, depression, suicide across the board? Or is it really just impacting that age?
Yeah, well, that book in particular is on kids, but if you look at the data out there, it's all of us, right? Like the documentary that was on Netflix maybe came out about a year ago called Social Dilemma, I think is what it was called, and there's a book. So I remember watching that and going, oh my God, like I can't believe that Facebook knows all this stuff about me, and so there was a guy on that documentary that had written a book, and so I decided to get the book. I think it was something like 10 reasons to delete your social media now. And so I got to reason number 6, and I was like, okay, I'm going to try this. So it was last year. It was right before the election because I'm like, I need to get off of social media anyway. Like, this is driving me crazy. And so I decided I was going off of it for a month, and it was really interesting on how, like, I actually felt like I had more time because I wasn't constantly picking up my phone and doing the depth scroll through Facebook or whatever. And more interesting than that to me was when I didn't log in and check in on my phone, pretty soon I started getting emails from Facebook. Hey, did you know it's so-and-so's birthday today? Hey, so-and-so posted something today. So they started trying to pull me back with emails, and then I still wouldn't go. And then I started getting texts from Facebook saying, did you know it's so-and-so's birthday today? A random text from a random number.
Exactly that happened in that document.
And it is exactly what happened to me. And I'm like, when I got the first one, I'm like, this is really creepy. And they know exactly when I log in, and they know if I haven't, how to try to drag me back in.
Mm-hmm.
It's so interesting, you know. And I think it's funny because there's kind of a subset of people out there that think, well, I'm not going to get the COVID vaccine because the government's going to inject a tracking device in me or whatever. I'm like, you've got a tracking device in your pocket for years already.
Which leads me to believe, don't turn off your social media accounts. You always listen to podcasts.
So if you're going to, this is the one.
Like the only one you need. Delete the rest of them. I have a question on this, and it's something I wanted to ask you. When it comes to just that self-reflection and I look at this, and this has kind of happened over the last year, and everything you see in the news is I think people feel the need that they need some type of validation from somebody else, or that they are so special.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's made me realize everybody has like a little circle in their lives that are super important. Their mom, their dad, their spouse, their kids, everything.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody outside of that, not really.
Mm-hmm.
But I think people have a false sense of, I should be special to everybody. And I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I don't think that's healthy for everybody to think that I'm special.
Mm-hmm.
Because in reality, I'm not.
Right.
We are so tiny in this world.
Right.
But I do think that's just kind of a mindset from everybody, like, we're not special.
Right. Yeah,
except to a very small amount of people.
Right, absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I mean, I think a couple things when you say that come to my mind is that I just lost now, both of them. But
they were great.
Yeah, they're amazing. Right? But one of the things is that like I think that we are in a society that feels like we need validation from other people to feel like we're worthy enough, that we belong, that we're loved. And if we can figure out how to actually love ourselves, we don't need all that other stuff. And so I think we actually have a society that has not figured out how to love themselves for who they're for. And like you say, like if I love myself and my parents love me and my kids love me and my significant other loves me, then after that, that's just gravy after that,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I think it's really hard for other people to love us if we don't like ourselves, though. Right? And you probably can all think about people who you're just like, God, I don't like, that person doesn't like themselves. And you can feel it.
Right.
And it's hard to like them as well then. And so I think there's an aspect of that
Sure.
if we can figure out how to do some of this inner work and really like ourselves and like who we are, we don't need that external validation, but we are really a society of needing external validation. And that's what social media, how many likes did I get? How many people viewed my video? How many, all that kind of stuff. And even though I know those things, I still see myself getting sucked into that. If I post something for Bounce Travels, like I'm logging in every couple days, how many people saw it? Oh, did they click on it? All those things.
Yeah, well, it's the dopamine hit, right? I mean, we're addicted to it. I'm reading Atomic Habits right now. I don't know if it's a book it's unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a good book and kind of brings you awareness of all this stuff. And the other thought I had was, going back to talking about loving yourself, that has a trickle-down effect that makes you more likable. Right? So it's not just just solely the fact that you love yourself, but once you come to grips with loving yourself, then there's and you're happier, then you're maybe more social, just whatever the trickle down is.
You realize that whatever happens up here is 10% of your happiness, and the other 90% is here, right? And there's another aspect of that loving yourself thing. I think that we all have these things in our face called motor neurons. So they're the little nerves that move our muscles, and so they're reflexive. And so if somebody's smiling at me, like I reflexively smile back at them. And so it's just like when you come into the doctor and we hit your knee and your leg goes up like that. That's how these nerves work in our face, is that somebody smiles at me, I smile back. Somebody frowns at me, I frown back. And it's one of those evolutionary things that 1,000 years ago, we needed to know if that person running at us was going to kill us, or are they a friend? And so that was our way of identifying. Like when they're smiling at me, I smile, and it helps me identify with the underlying emotion, which is happiness. And so that's evolutionarily there, and it helps us. And think about people that you walk into a room and somebody's smiling at you and they're inviting and happy. Well, it makes you more happy. It draws you to them versus somebody who's angry and frustrated and doesn't like themselves. It shows on their face, and then all of a sudden maybe you back away from them. Right, and so
maybe.
Right, yeah, you absolutely do. Right, you come in and read the room and go, "Oh, that person is the one I want to talk to."
Right.
You look interesting.
Yeah.
Let's bounce to. We've talked about some heavy things. Let's lighten it up a little bit. What was the most unique place that you've gone through those travels, or most impactful?
Yeah, I think all of them are really good in their own way. The one that really always has an impact on me is one that we do in Spain, and it's hiking what's called the Camino De Santiago. I don't know if either of you have heard of that or not, but it's a pilgrimage hike that is through northern Spain. Back in the year like 1100 is when it started, and so Christians throughout Europe would hike on this path to get to Santiago de Compostela, which is where this big cathedral is. It's supposedly where the Apostle James is buried. And so people would do this pilgrimage. And back in those days, the Catholic Church would offer you a plenary indulgence, which essentially means that you get out of purgatory and get into heaven if you do this. And so that was the motivation for people to go and do it. In reality, what the Catholic Church wanted is people to come to that area because the Muslims were pushing up from the southern part of Spain, and they needed more Catholics in the area to push them back down. But it is what it is. And so anyway,
Ticket to heaven seems like a pretty
seems
good
like right? And so we hiked this. We hiked the last 70 miles of this path into Santiago, and it is a real. Whether you go for a religious aspect, you go like I do, and think, oh, well, I'm going to hike like 10 miles a day. I'm going to lose some weight. I'm going to get. By the time I come back in 10 days, I'm going to be svelte. Like whatever you go for. Like it is really just this. Hike with a lot of other people. It's this camaraderie. You're hiking for a while. You stop in the afternoon at this little shop that's, I think I should have a glass of wine. It's 2:00. Why not?
Right.
And so it's really this very social kind of hike that you're on for a whole week. And then you come into this amazing cathedral that in all of its splendor has been here for 1,000 years. And it's just really unbelievably spiritual, and like you've accomplished something really wonderful and great, and you've done it in a group of people that are doing it alongside you. And so that's some of the joy of doing all of these things, is that you accomplish really cool things alongside other people, and so you have this kind of connection with each other.
Awesome.
And so that's a great trip. There was a bunch of people in town here 2 years ago, right before COVID. We hiked 70 miles through Bavaria. Flew into Munich and hiked a trail all the way through Bavaria to a place called Neuschwanstein, which is where there's a castle there that looks like the Disney castle. And so we hiked to that. We've done a pilgrimage into Rome. And we have one coming up in May that is hiking a peninsula in Ireland. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah.
And not so, obviously, physically demanding. And so people should know that. Yeah. Obviously, going into it,
Yeah. There's a couple things I would say about that, and so part of it is there are some physical demanding parts of it, mm-hmm. and those are, there's some big hills we hike up and all that kind of stuff. But how we always structure these is we have a van who is kind of the support van that goes, and so at about 2 or 3 places along the way, let's say the hike is 10 miles that day, which seems like a long hike, right? But if you think about it, and we start our hike at 10 o'clock in the morning and we're done at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, that's 9 hours, that's yep. 8 hours. And so that's not like a huge, significant hike. But along the way, we always have 2 or 3 stops where the van is there and they've got the back doors open and there's snacks and there's water and there's fruit. And so snacks, exactly, right? And if you're like, whew, that was rough, I want to ride to the next spot. Maybe ride to the next spot, or you want to go back to the hotel. Like, those are always options too. Yep. And so it really is. We've had people from the age of 23 to the age of 82 on our trips. Yep. And people with double knee replacements and all kinds of stuff.
So physically demanding, yes. Mm-hmm. Should it stop you from going?
Absolutely not.
No.
Yep.
Where's your bucket list trip?
Oh, that is a good question. Well, I definitely want to hike Machu Picchu one of these days. So that's one of them. And then the other one is kind of Vietnam, Cambodia area. So I love traveling. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up here, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it. For the Buffalo Community Podcast, I'm Tyler Reiss.
I'm Mark Benzer.
I'm Corey Martin.
All right. Thank you very much.